What would happen if a CEO disguised himself as an ordinary person and was rejected by his own hotel simply because of where he lived? On a chilly April evening, in the grand lobby of the Aurum Suites Riverside branch, a man walked in with an unremarkable appearance. His gray hoodie was frayed at the hem, his jeans were faded, and his worn-out sneakers looked like they had carried him halfway across the city. No one would have guessed that this man was Elias Monroe, the CEO of the entire Aurum hotel chain. 5 years earlier, after his father passed away, Elias had taken over the family's 4-branch legacy and quickly expanded it to 10 locations within just 3 years. But ever since he shifted his work entirely to the corporate office, the distance between him and the day-to-day operations of each branch had slowly widened. The numbers in the weekly reports looked great, but anonymous emails had started coming in, mentioning cold service, discrimination, and even unwritten policies that had never been issued by headquarters. That was why Elias decided to return to where it all began, but this time without the look of a CEO. None of the managers knew his face, nor had they ever met him in person. Elias chose the Riverside branch, a location recently acquired from a previous owner known for his strict, almost tyrannical management style. That night, Elias approached the front desk like any regular guest. Behind the counter was a young man named Tommy, his gelled hair slick and shiny, eyes focused on his computer. Elias spoke gently. "Hi, I'd like to book a room for the night." Tommy glanced up for just a second, his eyes skimming over the wrinkled hoodie, then back to the screen. "Are you a local?" he asked, his tone indifferent. Elias nodded. "Yes, I live about 5 minutes from here." Tommy sighed and leaned back in his chair. "Sorry, but we don't rent rooms to people who live in the area. It's a management policy." Elias blinked. "Policy?" he asked, keeping his voice calm, though a storm had begun to stir inside him. "We have vacancies, don't we?" Tommy idly glanced at the availability list. "We do, but we don't accept local guests. To avoid trouble, management is strict about it." Elias maintained his composure, but each word felt like a blow to his pride, not because he was rejected, but because the very system he built had become a place that judged people by their address rather than their character. He looked around the lobby. Everything looked proper, by the book, by the system, but utterly devoid of warmth. From the guest services desk nearby, a young woman had been observing the exchange. Her face showed a hint of unease. Elias recognized her. Lana, a staff member previously mentioned in a commendation from a former branch manager. Before he could say anything, a firm voice rang out from behind. "Is there a problem here?" A well-dressed middle-aged man stepped forward. His name tag read, "Mr. Grant, General Manager." Tommy immediately straightened up. "Sir, this man is a local and wants to book a room." Grant narrowed his eyes, scanning Elias from head to toe, his gaze plainly judgmental. "We don't accept locals. It's an internal policy." Elias returned a steady look. "I can pay in full. I just need a quiet night's rest." Grant crossed his arms, his tone measured. "We've had issues before. People using the rooms for inappropriate activities. It's nothing personal, just a precaution." Elias could feel the blood rush to his temples, but he said nothing. He simply stared at the man who represented a system he had once believed would revolutionize the hospitality industry with humanity at its core. Just then, Lana stepped forward quietly. "Excuse me, but I've never seen any official document stating we can't accept local guests. We usually do that, but it's more of a habit than a rule." Grant turned to her, his voice cold. "This doesn't concern you." But Lana didn't back down. "I just think, if a guest is willing to pay and isn't breaking any rules, we shouldn't decide for them." In that moment, Elias didn't just remember her words, he remembered her presence. A young staff member brave enough to speak the truth when everyone else chose silence. Without saying another word, Elias turned and walked out of the hotel, leaving behind Lana's bewildered gaze and Grant's indifference. But instead of walking far, he turned into a nearby alleyway, standing quietly under the soft yellow glow of a street lamp, eyes following the guests coming and going from the grand lobby. From the outside, everything looked fine. The lobby was clean, guests were arriving non-stop. But inside, Elias knew the culture had a serious problem. He pulled out his phone, opened his contacts, and stared at the number of the vice president of operations, but didn't dial, not yet. not when he had only just scratched the surface of something much deeper. He crossed the street and checked into a small hotel, then began planning for the next day. Not as a CEO, but as someone looking for a job. Because sometimes, to truly understand how a place operates, you can't look down from above. You have to descend to its very bottom. Elias Monroe wasn't there to observe. He was there to begin a cleansing, and it had only just begun. On the following morning, as the sunlight had yet to chase away the mist lingering over Riverside, Elias Monroe stood once again at the entrance of the Orem Hotel. He wore the same plain clothes from the day before, holding a convenience store coffee cup in one hand and a hastily printed resume from a nearby copy shop in the other. He hadn't slept much the night before. The events at the front desk still played in his mind, not because he felt insulted, but because the organization he ran had unknowingly allowed a toxic culture to take root. Today, he returned, not as a rejected guest, but as a job seeker. He was stepping directly into the belly of the very system he once trusted. The lobby was quieter in the morning. Only a few guests were checking out. The sound of suitcase wheels clicking against the white tile floor echoed in the still air. Behind the reception desk stood a woman in her mid-30s, her hair tied back in a bun, face bare of makeup, and a name tag reading, Linda. Her eyes looked tired, though not as cold as Tommy's had been. Elias stepped up with a gentle smile. "Excuse me, may I ask, is the hotel hiring?" Linda didn't look up, her eyes fixed on her computer screen. "You'll need to apply through the company's website. We don't accept paper applications." Elias nodded, still polite. "I don't have access to a computer, just thought I'd try asking. I used to work at a small hotel as a front desk clerk. I'm looking for something stable." Linda exhaled slowly, her voice flat as if reciting a script she'd repeated too many times. "I'm not sure. You should come back in the afternoon when the manager's in." But before the conversation faded completely, a familiar voice called from behind. "You're looking for work?" Elias turned. It was Lana. She wore a navy blue staff uniform, her hair neatly tied back, and her eyes just as sharp as they were the night before. He nodded. "I have some experience. If the hotel needs someone, I'd be happy to try." Lana glanced at Linda, then back at Elias. "Actually, perfect timing. 2 people just quit last week. Come with me. I'll introduce you to the assistant manager." Elias followed her down a narrow hallway behind the front desk. They passed the employee break room, where 2 workers sat silently eating breakfast, eyes glued to their phones, not speaking a word. The air was thick with the scent of burnt coffee and stale bread. Elias, trying to blend in, asked casually, "Was the night shift busy?" Lana let out a dry chuckle. "Around here, it always feels like one long night." They stopped in front of a slightly open office door. Inside sat a man in his late 20s, shirt wrinkled, hair messy, eyes glued to a computer screen. His name tag read, Eric, Assistant Manager. Lana knocked lightly on the doorframe. "Eric, someone's here for the front desk position." Eric glanced up, giving Elias barely a second's look. "Got experience?" Elias nodded. "Worked this role 2 years ago. No check-in procedures, customer service." Eric rubbed his forehead, sighed. "All right, you can start today." Lana, show him the ropes. No interview, no document checks, no background questions, just a quick response, and he was hired. Elias agreed, but mentally logged another red flag. Their hiring process was dangerously careless. Lana led Elias back to the front desk, explaining along the way, "You'll work this morning shift with me. I have to train you, so don't let the guests wait too long." Elias stayed in character, asking what seemed like simple questions. "Where do we print the key cards? Is the reservation list updated automatically? Do we use a central system or individual software per branch?" Lana answered clearly, her eyes occasionally flickering with slight suspicion. But after a few tasks together, she began to relax. "You learn fast." While guest traffic was light, Elias engaged her in small talk. "How long have you worked here?" Lana replied, "Almost 2 years." He continued, "Do you like this job?" She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "I like helping guests, but everything else, it's exhausting. Management only cares about reports. When something goes wrong, it's always the staff that gets blamed first." Elias didn't press further. He simply observed. Kevin, the same front desk agent from the night before, arrived nearly 10 minutes late, didn't greet anyone, and immediately sat down to scroll through his phone. Linda remained quiet, doing only what was strictly required. Eric left his office just once all morning to remind them, "Don't forget to take down the old promotion sign at the coffee bar." But no one moved to do it. Lana was the only one taking initiative, greeting guests, explaining policies, even stepping in when Kevin mishandled a customer's request. Elias thought to himself, a system might keep a business running, but only people like Lana can make it endure. At that moment, noise erupted from the elevator area. A middle-aged guest was arguing with Kevin. Elias looked to Lana. "What's going on?" She glanced toward the commotion. "Air conditioning again." Elias knew he had arrived at the right place at the right time, and that he was beginning to reach the deeper layers of the issue. But to understand the whole story, he would need to go even further. And that journey was just beginning. Under the bright lobby lights, the argument by the elevator quickly drew the attention of everyone at the front desk. A well-dressed man, clearly successful, stood in front of Kevin, his voice rising with every word. "I reported the broken air conditioner last night. The room feels like an oven. Are you just going to let your guests suffocate?" Kevin shrugged, his tone flat. "Sorry, but the hotel is fully booked. We can't offer a room change." The man's eyes widened. "Then call maintenance to fix it." Kevin shook his head. "The maintenance team isn't available right now." Behind the counter, Elias glanced at Lana. She frowned slightly and whispered, "Carl is still in the maintenance room. Kevin just doesn't want to make the call." Elias nodded subtly, his eyes never leaving the scene. The office door creaked open. Eric popped his head out for a second, then disappeared again without saying a word. When the guest began raising his voice, threatening to take this straight to corporate, another figure emerged, Mr. Grant. He walked out with a strained smile, his manner polite and composed, as if he hadn't ignored Elias the night before. "What seems to be the issue?" he asked, then gave Kevin a glance that silently instructed him to stay calm. The guest, hopeful now, turned to him. "Your staff refused to change my room or call maintenance. I want to file a formal complaint." Grant nodded with practiced poise. "I sincerely apologize for the inconvenience. Unfortunately, we don't have any rooms available to move you to, and our maintenance team is currently handling a backlog." Elias watched in silence. No one was actually trying to solve the problem. They were just trying to make it disappear. The guest walked off, muttering angrily, "Just wait, I'll be reporting this to corporate." Grant turned to Kevin, his tone dropping. "Next time, don't argue. Just say we're handling it." Kevin nodded passively. Lana remained still, her face unreadable, but Elias caught the flash of disappointment in her eyes. Elias stepped back from the counter, pretending to check the guest services area, then quietly headed toward the maintenance room at the end of the ground floor hallway. The door was slightly ajar. He knocked gently and stepped in. A middle-aged man in a faded uniform, screwdriver in hand, looked up, his name stitched on his shirt. "Carlton." "Hey there, I'm Elias, new at the front desk. Just trying to get familiar with a few areas," Elias said. Carlton tilted his head. "You're the guy Lana's showing around, right? That's unusual. Most folks don't even bother coming back here." Elias chuckled lightly. "Just had a guest complain about a broken AC on the third floor. Kevin said no maintenance was available." Carlton let out a short, dry laugh. "I've been here since 6 this morning. But you know Kevin, he likes to report things as handled, whether they are or not." Elias nodded. The picture was becoming clearer. It wasn't a matter of lacking staff. It was a lack of accountability. Not that things couldn't be fixed, just that no one bothered. No checks, no oversight, just a system on autopilot, limping along on habit. He left the maintenance room with a heavy feeling in his chest. On the way back, he peeked into the employee break room. Silence. No conversation. No laughter. Just the tap of fingers on phone screens, plastic spoons scraping food containers, and vacant, tired stares. That silence weighed more than any reprimand ever could. Later that afternoon, Elias sat in a quiet corner near the entrance to the conference room. He retraced the events so far. Indifferent front desk, ignored maintenance, angry guests, managers who deflected instead of addressed problems. But the most troubling sign wasn't any single incident. It was the collective silence. No one stood up to do what was right, except one. As Lana passed by, Elias spoke gently. "You're the only one who genuinely cared about the guest." She looked surprised, then offered a faint smile. "I just did my part." Elias met her gaze, calm and steady. No one forced you to speak up last night, but you still did. Lana hesitated, then lowered her voice. Because if I don't speak up now, one day I might become just like them. In that moment, Elias knew he had found the first person worthy of playing a vital role in this transformation. But to spark real change, he would have to expose the truth from within, layer by layer, person by person, unearthing what had been buried beneath neat reports and sanitized performance metrics. And so that night, Elias began writing his first journal entry, not for a press release, but for the quiet battle he was about to undertake. A reckoning not led by discipline, but by truth. The afternoon passed without incident, but the air inside the hotel remained heavy with fatigue. Elias used every quiet moment to observe more closely, from how staff communicated to how they avoided minor problems. Everything seemed to run on autopilot, with no trust, no motivation, and more importantly, no one taking responsibility for anything. Elias knew the time for action had come. Toward the end of the shift, Elias pretended to check the guest service supplies, then quickly headed straight to Grant's office. Without knocking, he walked in and closed the door behind him. Grant looked up from his computer, a flicker of surprise flashing across his face before it shifted into irritation. "What are you doing in here?" Elias didn't waste time. "I want to talk about how you're running this hotel." Grant let out a dry laugh, leaning back in his chair. "You're the new guy, right? If you're unhappy, take it up with the assistant manager." Elias stepped closer, his voice steady and firm. "You've turned guests away without legitimate reason. You've allowed staff to abuse their authority. Maintenance is ignored. Housekeeping is severely understaffed. Do you even know what our guests are saying about us?" Grant frowned, his tone sharpening. "Who are you to make that judgment?" Elias met his eyes directly, then slowly reached into his pocket, pulling out a business card and placing it on the desk. "I'm Elias Monroe. I own this hotel, and I've been here for the past 2 days, witnessing everything." The room fell into a dense silence. Grant froze, his eyes darting between Elias's face and the card in front of him. The color drained from his face, as if the blood had rushed out in a single moment. I didn't know." "That's exactly the problem," Elias said. His voice wasn't raised, but every word cut through years of complacency like a blade. "You didn't know because you didn't care. You've turned this place into a soulless machine run by fear and indifference. The staff are afraid to speak up. The guests are treated like burdens. You think you're managing, but all you're doing is hiding." Grant opened his mouth to protest, but Elias raised a hand to stop him. "There's nothing more to say. You're fired. Please leave the premises today." Silence filled the office once again. Grant said nothing, quietly gathering the files he had been working on. Elias didn't spare him another glance. He turned and walked out, opening the door wide so everyone in the lobby could see him, openly and without disguise. Lana, standing near the front desk, froze when she saw Elias. The other staff, though avoiding eye contact, clearly understood what had just happened. Elias didn't keep them waiting. "I'm Elias Monroe, the owner of this hotel. As of today, Grant will no longer be working here." A hush fell over the lobby. The oppressive atmosphere from earlier was slowly replaced by something else, a mix of disbelief, relief, and cautious hope. Elias continued, his tone calm but decisive. "I will not tolerate a place that serves guests with discrimination and irresponsibility. The policy of rejecting local residents is abolished immediately. Housekeeping will be reinforced with new hires. Maintenance will have a direct line to the front desk, and those who truly serve with kindness will be recognized." He turned to Lana, his eyes steady. "Starting today, you're the new assistant manager." Lana's eyes widened and she took a small step back. "Me? But You were the only one who spoke up for what's right, even when it could have cost you your job. This hotel needs people like you in leadership." Lana couldn't find the words to respond, but the quiet strength in her gaze said it all. Elias looked around at the rest of the staff. "I know some of you have thought about quitting. Some of you are just hanging on because you feel like you have no other choice. But if you want real change, I'll stand with you. If you're here to just get by, then I'm sorry you won't be here much longer." From the hallway near the maintenance room, Carlton stepped out, arms folded, leaning against the wall. He gave a slow nod. "Finally, someone's cleaning house." A few murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. A new energy began to stir, not loud, but unmistakably real. Elias took a deep breath. The transformation wasn't over. But the first, most crucial step had been taken. The undercover figure had revealed himself, and the mask that shielded the old system had finally fallen. After that afternoon, the Orem Riverside Hotel fell into an unusual silence, as if every movement was holding its breath, waiting to see whether this was truly a wind of change or just a fleeting impulse from a rarely seen owner. Elias knew that firing Grant and changing a policy were only the first steps. The real challenge was trust, something that had eroded over months, perhaps even years. Lana, now stepping into her new role as assistant manager, began the following morning with a short meeting with the front desk team. She didn't read a memo, didn't flash a badge of authority. She simply asked, "In your opinion, what makes a guest feel respected right from the beginning?" Silence filled the room. Kevin, still carrying an air of reluctance, spoke up, "Just follow the procedure." Lana didn't argue, she nodded. "Yes, but procedures are the framework. Kindness is the soul." Elias stood just outside the door, listening and observing. The way Lana handled the conversation, calm, unforceful, inviting rather than commanding, genuinely surprised him. He realized that true leadership doesn't need a title to make an impact. Meanwhile, Carlton, the loyal maintenance technician, proactively reopened the backlog of service requests that had been ignored for weeks. Elias offered to help him for an afternoon, not with words but with actions. They repaired the faulty air conditioner from the previous day, then moved on to inspect the drainage system on the ground floor. While removing the bolts from a water valve, Carlton chuckled. "I've worked here for 11 years. Never seen an owner bend down to pick up a wrench for me." Elias responded simply, "I'm not picking up a wrench. I'm listening to what most reports can't say." In the housekeeping room, 3 women, middle-aged, weary, were taking a short break. One rubbed her knees, another pulled down her mask to breathe more easily. Linda, who once seemed indifferent at the front desk, was now helping them reorganize their cleaning schedules more efficiently. Her usual fatigue had been replaced by initiative and specific suggestions. Elias asked her, "What makes you want to stay?" Linda thought for a moment, then replied, "Because for the first time, I feel someone is listening not just to reply, but to truly hear." By the end of the day, Elias gathered the entire staff in a small conference room. There were no slides, no KPI boards, just him, standing before them with sincerity. "I can't promise this place will become perfect overnight, but I will clean up everything that made you lose faith in the first place." He laid out immediate changes, more hires for the housekeeping team, a direct line of communication between maintenance and the front desk, a simplified and transparent system for guest feedback. He also confirmed the launch of an anonymous internal evaluation program so anyone could speak out without fear of retaliation. Kevin, sitting at the back, lowered his head slightly. Carlton nodded. Lana stood beside Elias for the first time, a clear signal that those who embraced change would stand beside leadership. After the meeting, as people began to leave, a young housekeeper approached Elias quietly and said, "Before we just tried to get through the shift. Now, I feel like I want to do it right." Elias smiled. It was comments like these that truly signaled change. That night, while walking the third-floor corridor, Elias saw Lana and Linda placing a small vase of flowers on the guest table. He paused for a moment, then said, "For the first time in years, this hotel smells kind." And indeed, though there was still so much to do, this place had started to breathe again. Not through the sound of air conditioning or ringing phones, but through the quiet heartbeat of people beginning to believe in something good. 1 week had passed since Elias revealed himself. In that short span of time, the Orem Riverside Hotel had transformed more than it had in an entire year. New staff were being hired, work shifts were reorganized more reasonably, the maintenance team was running efficiently, and most importantly, the employees had started talking to one another. But Elias knew that surface-level changes were only the tip of the iceberg. The root of the issue ran much deeper, the reason why people no longer wanted to stay. One afternoon, he stepped into the staff break room and found Linda, the senior receptionist, sitting quietly with a cup of cold coffee. She didn't look up when he entered, but the air between them carried a kind of silent understanding. Elias sat down, waited a moment, then asked, "Is there something you still haven't said?" Linda inhaled deeply, then slowly exhaled. "I've been in hospitality for nearly 20 years. I've seen a lot of changes, come and go. Some people, like you, fierce, passionate, but they're only here for a few days before they disappear. In the end, everything reverts back to how it was." Elias didn't argue. He simply asked softly, "What makes someone want to stay for the long run?" Linda looked straight at him, her eyes free of resentment, only honest. "Respect, and a salary that's enough to live without struggling." She paused, then added, "People don't quit because the job is hard. They leave because they feel like they're nothing in the eyes of the system." That night, Elias sat in his room, opened his laptop, and started doing the math. Raising salaries wasn't an easy decision, especially when operating costs had already reached their limits. But he couldn't rebuild a foundation on responsibility and slogans alone. He needed to put his trust in people, in both spirit and substance. Finally, he hit send on an email to the finance department. Implement a base salary increase for all staff at the Riverside branch, effective immediately. The next morning, Elias held a private meeting with Lana and Eric, the former assistant manager, now slowly evolving. When Elias announced the decision, Eric frowned. "Are you sure? This won't be cheap." Elias nodded. "It'll cost more if we keep hiring new people only to lose them again after 3 months." Lana stayed quiet, but her eyes lit up. She said softly, "This is the first time in my life I've worked somewhere that treats kindness as a strategy, not a slogan." The announcement circulated around midday. The initial response was silence, as if no one believed it was real. But then, a housekeeper began to cry after reading the notice. Carlton shook Elias's hand and whispered, "I thought I'd be quitting at the end of the month, but I think I'll stick around a while longer." And on that very day, something unexpected happened. Kevin, the front desk clerk Elias had once confronted, walked up to the reception counter and placed a piece of paper on the desk. "Request to stay," he said, eyes downcast. "I know I haven't done well, but I want to change." Lana glanced at Elias, who gave a small nod. Opportunities are for those who truly want to begin again. By the weekend, Elias organized a full staff meeting. No corporate-style chairs, no presentation schedules. He simply stood at the center of a circle of people who had once drifted apart and said one simple sentence: "I don't need you to be superheroes. I just need you to believe that something good can start right here." Linda offered a rare smile. Carlton leaned against the doorframe and nodded. Lana stood beside Elias, a quiet reminder that sometimes big changes begin with a single small voice. And then the room broke into applause. No one had been told to do it, but they did, because now they had started to feel that this place could be part of their lives, not just where they clocked in for a paycheck. Elias was no longer the undercover boss. He was the one leading, not by title but by choice. He knew there was still much to do. Many other hotels in the chain were waiting to be awakened, but this time, he would not walk away and leave it all to a written report. He would stay, listen, and continue the journey. As night fell over Riverside, the lights from the Orem Hotel were more than just physical illumination. They were the light of a new hope, sparked by trust, sustained by conviction, and kept alive by those who had nearly lost one another within the very place they called work. The culture of an organization is not defined by the rules posted on the walls, but by how people treat one another when no one is watching. A truly courageous CEO is someone who dares to step into the shadows, not to control, but to illuminate. If you believe that lasting change begins from within, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more inspiring stories like this. And leave a comment with the phrase "real change" if you believe that trust can be rebuilt from someone who truly listens.